Very good evening to all our viewers. Welcome to today's edition of the Evening Review. My name is Toivan Jabela, your host. Tonight we are celebrating the launch of this book, Guide to the Namibian Economy by Robin Sherbourne, who's been very brilliant actually in publishing similar books in the past. It was launched last night in Windhoek, and he gave a brilliant presentation also summarizing the book. Robin, what an honor to have you on the show.
Oh, it's a real pleasure to be here, Toivo.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah, wonderful. I think because obviously the book is new, we haven't had a chance to read it yet. We can always just predict, obviously, that it's as brilliant as those that came before it. But your presentation is what caught our eye. Yeah, the state of the Namibian economy. What is the state of the Namibian economy at the moment? I know it's a big question because there are so many things to say, but in summary.
Yeah, okay. Great, thanks for the question. So in summary, it's been struggling, and it's been struggling since 2016.
Yeah.
So we had the global financial crisis in 2008, 9, 10. Namibia handled that pretty well and came out of it growing strongly. So the economy was growing, things were doing reasonably well, jobs were being created. But for some reason in 2016, that growth completely stalled, and it stalled all the way up until the big COVID hit of 2020, when the economy shrank by 8%. We're recovering slightly from that huge knock, but basically we haven't seen growth now since 2016. And I was trying to show the data that demonstrated that, and ask the question, well, why did it suddenly stall in 2016?
Yeah, it's very interesting because, in fact, that is the question on everybody's lips as to what exactly happened, because we were on an upward trend, and then suddenly, and I see in your presentation you tried to also zoom into some of the reasons that have been peddled, some by state actors and also in your own observation. What brought us to where we are?
Yeah, okay, well that's the key question, isn't it? That's what we all want to know. And I don't pretend to have all the answers and all the evidence, but it seems to me there were two sets of reasons. One, yes, were external factors. So we've experienced several very severe droughts over the past decade. We've had things like the uranium price take a real knock in 2011. We've seen the economic slowdowns in Angola and South Africa. And we know a lot of Angolans and South Africans come here and spend their money. So a knock there also affects us. But apart from those external reasons, I'm arguing in the presentation that there are also internal reasons over which we have control, which came together at that moment to basically end up to stall the growth of the economy. And there are a whole variety of internal reasons there, but these are things under our control. So I think, for example, we lost control of the public finances at that moment. We started borrowing hugely. The economy was basically flatlining. We kept on spending at a higher level, and to finance that spending, we had to borrow. And that means public debt is now over 70% of GDP, which is huge, unprecedented in Namibia. We also enacted a range of badly thought out policies, such as the Namibian Investment Promotion Act, which was passed in 2016, which clearly foreign investors took fright at. And our economy is very open, and it depends on foreign investment as well as local investment. And also the NEEB, the National Equitable Economic Empowerment Bill, which was floated in 2016 as well, which at that stage envisioned all businesses in the country basically having to give or sell, it wasn't very clear, 25% of that away to unspecified, previously disadvantaged Namibian. So I think together, the external factors and the internal policy factors hit our economy very hard.
Yeah. In your presentation, you seem also to allude to lack of accountability, leaders basically pointing fingers at anyone else but themselves. And you seem to, of course, now talk about some of the policy decisions that might have also contributed to this issue. And that cannot be blamed on anyone else but the leaders themselves who came up with them, and they are implementing these decisions. How important is it for because they seem to be, our leaders seem to be living in denial. So if you don't acknowledge that there's a problem, how are you going to solve it?
Well, I think that's the key point, isn't it? Now, they're not unique among world political leaders for this characteristic, but we really do have to get beyond that, and we have to learn from our mistakes, make changes where necessary, and move forward. And that's what I was arguing yesterday.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of talk, you know, there are a lot of meetings, a lot of speeches, but there's very little action. And one of the examples I gave was public enterprise reform. So in 2015 we established a Ministry of Public Enterprises, and I was optimistic. The economy was still growing quite strongly up to that point. I was quite optimistic that this would sort out the problem of public enterprises, which for some years had been a drain on the public purse. But, you know, 7 years later we've had the ministry's now produced the PIGA, the Public Enterprise Governance Act. That took 4 years to get on the statute book. It's now been merged with the Ministry of Finance. But if you look at actually what's happened, very little has actually been reformed. Yes, we've closed Air Namibia. We were basically forced into that. It wasn't part of any grand strategy. But the others remain largely unreformed. And we see, I have a table in the presentation that most of them are either loss-making or not even producing annual financial statements, so we don't even know what their status is. So it's an example of where we talk big and, you know, we do all the talking, but we don't do the walking. And we've got to learn to do the walking as well, however painful that is.
And it scares me because I am one of the people who never got to accept, let alone understand, the rationale behind transforming the Public Enterprises Ministry into what will become now a department within the Ministry of Finance, because given the status of our SOEs, I thought a standalone ministry solely focused on that would have maybe made a dent, a positive dent going forward. Now, making it a directorate doesn't convince me so much. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I'm a little bit like you. I thought giving it ministerial status meant it really had heft and it could actually take action, but that clearly wasn't the case. So I'm not actually sure if there's a huge difference between a ministry overseeing the public enterprises or the minister. I think with a powerful Minister of Finance, and perhaps Minister Shimi is that minister, he can more effectively take action than a less powerful Minister of Public Enterprises. But whatever the case, in 7 years we've seen remarkably little action.
You alluded briefly to public debt, which have shot through the ceiling now. And I discuss this a lot, especially on social media with experts who chip in and say, but it's not too bad. And I'm like, what is it that I don't understand here? Because we had a cap of, I think, 35% all along. Then we blew it through 40-something%. We were saying, oh no, we are still within the SADC limit. Then once we went through that, we were saying, oh no, according to the World Bank, we are still within allowable limits for our size of the economy. How bad is it to be where we are now? And as a matter of fact, because people say, you can borrow, but if you do not use that borrowing to invest into the productive sectors of the economy, then you're in trouble.
Well, I think you've put your finger on it, to be honest, Tove, because there are two elements to this. There is, yes, you can borrow, but if you borrow too much, you get to a stage where lenders aren't going to lend to you unless you lean very hard on institutions like the GIPF, which we've been doing, to be fair. But you're certainly not going to get, with the credit rating downgrades that we've experienced since 2016, you're not going to get foreign lenders coming in and lending to us. So you reach a limit, and that means when another crisis hits, whatever that crisis is, we could be facing another pandemic. I'm not saying we are, but we could be. You don't have that fiscal firepower to then react and help the people, like the emergency income grant. You can't do so many things like that because you're borrowed up to your eyeballs. The other thing is precisely that, and that was another point I was trying to make last night, is what have we got to show for this last 10 years worth of borrowing? Just after the financial crisis, our debt to GDP ratio was around 20%. It was low. We were under borrowed, there's no doubt about it. But we've borrowed a hell of a lot of money from all sorts of people over the last 10, 12 years. What have we got to show for it? It seems like the more we've borrowed, the slower our economy grows. We're not using that borrowing to invest in really productive infrastructure. We invest, I would argue, in a lot of expensive, overpriced white elephants that look very nice on the outside but don't really contribute to the productive capacity of the economy.
Wonderful. We go for a quick break and return for second half.
3, 2, 1.
We Talk brings you community news that lies at the heart of Windhoek residents. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact wetalk@synergy.com.na. You live, we talk.
The Regional Review brings you news, views, and interviews from NMH correspondents from across the country. If you would like to feature your brand or campaign on this platform, contact regional@synergy.com.na.
Tourism Expo 2022 are open. The expo will take place from 3 to 5 November 2022 in Windhoek. To secure your booking, visit nte.nmh.com.na. And for more information on the expo, follow all Namibia Media Holdings platforms. The expo is supported by the Ministry of Environment, Tourism and Forestry, Namibia Tourism Board, FENATA, City of Windhoek, and Namibia Media Holdings. Namibia Tourism Expo, taking tourism to the regions.
We continue our conversation with Robin Sherbourne. Well, one of the things that caught the attention of many people, and I saw it circulating on WhatsApp groups in particular this morning, was where you ask the pertinent question of, do we take policy seriously? And then you went through a lot of things to sort of drive your point home. What are we getting wrong in terms of policy? You are mentioning the green schemes, you're talking about the EPZ, the Namibia Investment Promotion and Development Board, and all that.
Good question, and again, I'm being quite critical. I produced one slide of my presentation with this critique of policy making, but I could have produced many more. I just selected a number at random. If you read my book, you'll see, and I don't criticize harshly, but I lay out the facts as I see them. I could have named a lot more examples. I think a number of things go wrong, and it's because we don't take the more technocratic approach to a lot of what we do very seriously. Everything becomes politicized or subject to interest groups, lobbying. So we don't often design policies properly. There's a lot of wishful thinking. You know, we'd like this to happen, but it's not hard-nosed enough. Then there's weak implementation very often. Then there's fundamentally flawed legislation. I've mentioned some examples already. And then there are things just taking too long to really get through the system. The institutions, because it's very consultative, bureaucratic, whatever it is. And then there's the issue of, you mentioned the NIPDB, which I was very excited about when it started. But we haven't seen that much come out of it 2.5 years down the road. And to me, it was another example of where, yes, the Ministry of Industry and Trade wasn't doing its job. The Namibian Investment Centre was pretty ineffective institution. So instead of reforming that, we create something new. So we don't solve the problem, we just create another institution, and that then creates a tension between the ministry and the new institution. I'd expected the new institution being housed in the office of the president would have an awful lot of clout again, could get things through, would have that sort of that backing, but that doesn't seem to be the case. We're sort of mired in turf wars now, and nothing really moves forward.
So we are heading into an election in 2 years' time, and the ruling party obviously is also having its internal contestations to find that candidate that I suppose if they were to win in 2024 will then have a responsibility more to the economy than anything else, because what is in a crisis at the moment in our country, it's the economy. How do then, I mean, the facts are there as summarized by yourself, but going forward, how do we move out of here? Debts and all these things.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of things we can do. We can put right the things that I've alluded to that are going wrong. I think an awful lot rests on the personality of that future president, and I'm not on any particular side there. I've seen the competition as it is so far. Maybe the opposition parties think they're in with more of a chance this time round. I'm not really speculating on that, but I would say that whoever emerges has to put far more emphasis on effective economic management and effective implementation and better design and all the things that I'm talking about. And I don't expect senior politicians necessarily to be what we call policy wonks, but they must appoint good technical staff who are the policy wonks, who can design and implement more effectively. And then they must be given the backing to do that. So that's the challenge. I do see that in the run-up to the election in 2024 and slightly beyond, we're going to be in a difficult situation. The global economy isn't looking great at the moment. We've got the war in the Ukraine, we've got energy prices, we've got rising interest rates, we've got the zero COVID policy in China. We've got a whole host of challenges. Things don't look that good for the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years until some big things potentially happen in this economy.
Yeah. How big a job is it to inherit an economy that is in tatters like ours at the moment, because I don't think it's so scary. I am, as a Namibian, I'm so scared because so many things, you know. I remember when we graduated from university, I for one, I suppose I was lucky, but I was home for 2 months only. Third month I had a job. Now people graduate in fields that used to get jobs first. Your education graduates like your teachers, your nurses, those were always the primary persons to get jobs. And the vacancies are there, but there's no money to fund those positions. Just how big a job is it for the incoming president to really turn things around?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, you can look at it two ways. One is that it's a huge challenge, but the other is that it's a huge opportunity, because a lot of the things that I'm talking about are relatively straightforward to put right. Better policy, better technical implementation, design, all those sorts of things. They're not going to cost billions of dollars. It's about good people, good management, good political leadership, and setting clear goals. And I don't think that's expensive, but it seems politically it's quite fraught. So the challenge is a political challenge at the end of the day, but to give good technical people their head in the public sector to take the country forward. Yeah.
Where does the future of the Namibian economy lie? There's a lot of talks about oil discoveries, green hydrogen industries emerging. Where must we invest our hopes in?
Yeah. Well, it is important to have hope, and I'm hopeful as well. You've pointed to two very large potential developments: green hydrogen and ammonia and oil and possibly gas as well. These are two potentially huge game changers for Namibia. I think in both cases, Namibia, and I have to give credit to government here as well, has played it very, very well so far. But I think these developments are some years down the track. I think 5, 6 years down the track. So we have to get there first. You know, we have to get over this difficult period. But I would say those are huge opportunities for Namibia, but they bring with them their own challenges. And the fundamental challenge is these will involve huge foreign investments, billions of US dollars, and they're going to want a return on that investment. But the challenge is to get away from the danger that they're island economies. They're like separate from the rest of the economy. They just employ foreigners. They don't interact with the rest of the economy. There are no spillovers, skills, local content, all that sort of thing. They must be more integrated. Namibians must benefit from these things, and they must be seen to benefit from them. Otherwise, it's going to raise hostility, essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, it can get very nasty.
Yeah, and that's where the clever policy making and the good technocratic implementation also comes in. You need some smart people to design these systems and to implement them.
Yeah. Address me quickly as we close, we draw towards the end of this conversation, Robin. One of the things that Namibians, I don't know whether it's out of sheer, I don't know, it's ignorance or just, not having enough faith in the government, but around the issue of oil, for example, people saying, yeah, the Namibian stake in some of these reserves is so small, and government has come forth. I had an interview with Tom Alwendo, who was saying, look, if you put everything else together, the royalties, the taxes, the small shareholding in some of these things, but overall, Namibia actually stands to accrue more benefits than perhaps their partners. Now, your thoughts, do we need to have 50%? Or how do we make sure that whatever the numbers are, somehow we are not disadvantaged?
Well, that's a good question. That comes down to good negotiation teams on the government side. We have, I'd say, a reasonable framework already in place that was designed quite soon after independence, because we've been looking for oil a long time now. And certainly Minister Alwendo has made some very, I'd say, sober, realistic and very encouraging remarks about the whole thing. We've set up this sovereign wealth fund in advance, for example. But I think it's all about transparency as well. We haven't yet joined the Natural Resource Governance Institute framework, so we're open about things. I see it a little bit, if there's ever an example in Namibia already, it's that of Namdeb and De Beers, which is a joint venture, so it's 50-50. This won't be 50-50, but that's an example of where government is shareholder. But I have to say, a lot of people tell me that they feel De Beers are exploiting Namibia. They're not giving enough, or that Namibia isn't getting enough from the deal. And all I would say is it's very hard to find out what's really going on, because everything is shrouded in mystery and secrecy. So a member of the public can suspect whatever they like because there's no information out there. I'm hoping that oil will be a different story. It'll be more transparent, how much the oil company is getting, how much Namibia is getting, how many local jobs, all this kind of thing. And I think that's where the challenge is. And I, for one, will be watching this very, very closely.
The oil, if you look at African examples, countries, the leading producers, your Nigerias, your Angola, our neighbor here, there's nothing much there that you can say this is an oil country, oil producing country like your Qatars, other countries, especially in the Middle East, have done very well for their economies. What lessons can we learn from the likes of other African countries that have really struggled to just, come out of the doldrums? Yeah,
absolutely. Again, you've put your foot on it, your finger on it. I wrote my last quarterly economic review about this subject exactly. I looked at sub-Saharan African experiences of oil and gas, and there are certainly lessons you can learn there. I'm confident that Namibia will learn those lessons and will avoid their mistakes. I believe that. I've listened to Minister Alwendo, I've listened to other people. It sounds pretty good at this stage, but it's still early days. It has the potential to transform pretty much everything in this country, not least government's finances. But we've seen African governments, some of them, get into trouble even before the oil revenues start flowing, and we want to avoid that. But it could mean a much more generous grant system, for example, or a basic income grant, something like that. It opens up all sorts of possibilities.
Absolutely. Robin, congratulations on this wonderful book. We'll go through it from the front page to the back. Where can it be found, and how much can one get it for?
Okay, you can buy it at the Book Den, but I think there's a markup involved there. If you go straight to the IPPR, just contact info@ippr.org.na and Ndeshi will help you, or you pass by the IPPR in town here and just give Ndeshi your $300 and she'll give you a copy of the book.
Wonderful.
It's an absolute bargain at $300. I'm sure. $1 per page, it's a bargain.
I'm sure. It's so thick, my friend. Thank you for coming to the show.
Thank you very much, Toy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, that was Robin Sherbourne. He's author and economist, and this is his latest offering. Really, really important, especially in the times that we are in. grab yourself a copy and yeah, have a lovely evening.